Welcome back to the program. To more news, Israeli authorities announced the lifting of indoor mask requirement as its caseload remains low and small. Earlier, Eagle News Broadcasting Corporation was able to talk to His Excellency Rafael Harpaz, Ambassador of Israel to the Philippines, who gave us an update on the success story of Israel in tackling the pandemic. He also talked about how they took care of our Filipinos living in Israel. Take a look.
Would like to welcome to our program Israeli Ambassador to the Philippines, His Excellency Rafael Harpaz. Welcome to the program again, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me again, Alma here.
Yes. The last time we talked, Israel is already reopened your economy fully. Could you give us an update on what is happening now in Israel?
Starting yesterday, no need for masks, not indoors, not outdoors, except for hospitals or people that were not vaccinated, and certainly at the airport. There is no mask. There is really normal life in Israel, completely normal life in Israel. And the economy is start to move fast. We have a fast recovery of the economy. Unemployment is going down. And even tourism is starting slowly with the right measures. So we are doing very well. We beat COVID, and we are back totally back in track, and we are very proud of this.
Mm-hmm. What about for unvaccinated people? Will they still be needing masks?
There are some restrictions about unvaccinated people. First, there's the group of children under 12 years old. They can't be vaccinated. Then we started vaccinating the ages from 12 to 15 after the FDA has approved it. And we don't, as you know, we don't have, you can force people to be vaccinated. Even more than 5.5 million Israelis were vaccinated. But we have a very strict protocols. If you want to travel abroad, for example, you need to do a COVID test and other things. So COVID doesn't get headlines in Israel anymore, I would say. Things which is good. We are back. I know many countries are struggling. We are doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to stay vigilant. We need to be, that's correct. So for example, if you're not vaccinated and you're returning to Israel, you need to go for a quarantine. If you've been exposed, if you're vaccinated and you're exposed to somebody which is sick, you don't need a quarantine in Israel because you're protected, you're vaccinated. And in Israel, the population was vaccinated by Pfizer, even though we have also Moderna, but it's Pfizer. And also all the 30,000 Filipinos OFWs were vaccinated by us for free. All the students from TESTA were vaccinated by us. All the team of the Filipino embassy diplomats, including the ambassador, were vaccinated by us. All those newcomers, OFWs, which comes every day to Israel, they land and they get the vaccine immediately for free, no cost.
It's amazing. You began your rollout in December, remarkably swift, spurred by this massive supply of doses. And the Green Pass. What's the update on the Green Pass?
Well, first, why Israel has a very developed and health system, and it's all the distribution is done by 4 HMOs that are medical organizations, which every Israeli is affiliated to one of them, and gives you all your medical services. And we have a national health law that all of us are covered. The Green Pass is not relevant actually now. It's not relevant, which is at the beginning that was the incentive, but now it's a non-issue. I know all those issues are hardly a non-issue. I have to be we have to stay vigilant because I saw in a school, for example, in central Israel, there were 11 pupils that were sick because one of the fathers that came from abroad that was sick. But generally, life is normal. They just walk in the streets, no mask, nothing, no face. And except medical hospitals and other places. But again, I think we need to stay vigilant. Also, Israel secured 16 million doses for 2022 of Pfizer and Moderna. It's not for the people that we are vaccinating now. It's for a potential third dose or a booster that might be needed. So we decided that we'll go for it because we were the first in the world, almost the first in the world, that started a massive vaccination campaign, and we have this herd immunity now. And all the eyes of the world are at Israel because we are the laboratory. We are a small country. You can't compare it to the Philippines or the US. We are small. but it's very successful and no major side effects, because when we started in December, a lot of things were not known, and people were concerned. Now we know the vaccine is working.
Yes.
And it's working very well. And actually, the country has extended the validity of the vaccine for a year because we know it's working. So now it's extended for at least a year until the end of December 2021. And so life is very normal now.
Mm-hmm. What about the Filipinos there? What if they don't have HMOs?
They have it automatically. They are insured. It's a must. You have to be part. You have to be affiliated. That's it. There is no one Filipino that he can go to a doctor. We take good care of the Filipinos in Israel. And as far as I know, we are the first country that offered and vaccinated the Filipinos OFWs abroad. I know it's highly appreciated by the Filipinos.
Oh, we highly appreciate it. Yes.
And we appreciate the Filipino OFWs because they are caregivers and they take care of our most beloved people, our parents and grandparents. Elderly, and they did an amazing work during this really tough months of COVID and lockdowns that we had in Israel in the last year and 3 months.
Recently, I know that we had like a fragile situation with the Hamas, but you took care of the OFWs, giving them warnings and all that.
They are part of us. We treat them like we treat them our own citizens. This is how Israel is treating all the OFWs.
How is the situation now? It's back to normal.
Well, we have a new government in Israel, a new prime minister. It's been exactly 2 days ago. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is the new prime minister of Israel. With a new foreign minister, Yair Lapid. So we wish for the state of Israel that the government will succeed. But we won't accept any, attacks on Israel, something which is very, very important. And not even one country in the world will agree that thousands of missiles will be shot on Israel. And we need to protect ourselves with the right of self-defense.
True. Mm-hmm. What about flights? Any outbound, inbound travel? Has there been updates on that?
Well, first, flights to Israel are going from all over the world, but from the Philippines, and I'm very happy that PHL has announced formally that they are intending to start flying in October the direct flights to Israel. We are welcoming it. It's been discussed already before COVID and agreed. Now it's in the final process of a lot of bureaucracy, but the intention of PHL to fly, it's a great news. And it will be a successful line, I believe, because the basic thing is the lack of, in normal days, the lack of, no need for visa. When you don't need for visa, both citizens from both sides, this is a basic element to have a movement of tourists, businessmen, between the two countries. And the fact that there is no in normal days, again, now in COVID, it's different times, no request for visas, it's a basic element. Add to this, the huge interest of Israelis, I see it in all the Facebook groups. They just want to return to the Philippines, to travel here, to go to the rice terrace in the Cordillera, to Banaue, to Segada, to go to the beautiful islands of Siquijor and Camiguin and El Nido and Boracay and Coron. And the same for Filipinos, which are eager to go back to visit the Holy Land, Jerusalem and Nazareth and the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea and to visit the OFW. So the potential is enormous. We had in 2019, before COVID, we had approximately 35,000 Filipino tourists visiting Israel, in addition to the 30,000 OFWs, which are living with us. And we had around 25,000 Israelis which were visiting the Philippines tourists. So the numbers will grow dramatically, and it will add a lot to our people-to-people contact, to investment, to business, which is already growing. So I'm welcoming this decision, and we as a government will assist and facilitate in whatever we can when it comes to this line, which is a very important decision for us.
What can we learn from Israel regarding COVID-19?
Well, I can tell you what are the lessons. There are a lot of lessons that we take from what we have experienced the last bit more than a year. First, we learned that we need to strengthen our medical system. We need to strengthen our doctors and nurses and the other teams that are working. We need to strengthen our hospitals. And this is very, very important. Strong health system is a strong national security. This is first. Second, we have learned that we can work from a distance. In normal days, we conduct this interview face to face. And the working from distance, it has many advantages. Less pollution, less traffic, gives people more time with the family. So this is something that really it's open our doors to new venues and to use new technology, distance learning, and things that were not so developed before the crisis. Mm-hmm. Then we realized, especially in Israel, that we need to give more support to the private businesses, especially the small businesses, because those that work, for the government, for public institutions, they were fine. But those small businesses, a restaurant, a grocery shop, a small furniture shop, they were hit badly during this time because of the lockdowns. And so this is, for example, in Israel, we have a very systematic system of unemployment payments for people which are working for getting paid a monthly salary, but it wasn't existing for private business. So now it's something that the new government actually is also going to look into it, and which is very, very important. So these are the lessons I think that, and the virus doesn't have borders. So it's international cooperation in this respect is very, very important. And I'm very pleased that when it comes to the Philippines, Israel was capable of assisting the Philippines during this crisis. In several occasions, I submitted donations. We share our know-how. And actually in the coming next week, there is a high-level delegation that will come from Israel to share with your task force and your medical institutions and government and the way that Israel dealt with the distribution of the vaccines.
This is very encouraging news. Going back, your very good news about restoring confidence in travel. You also had mutual recognition of COVID-19 vaccine passports with other countries.
Correct. We had it with, if I'm not wrong, we proposed it to several countries, including the Philippines. I know you're still learning it. We have it, I think, with Cyprus, with Hungary, with Greece, and a few other European countries. And the basic is that we recognize, and Israel for the time being is recognizing Moderna and Pfizer. We don't have AstraZeneca, so I think that's why they did that. And we had the groups of tourists that already arrived in this formula. Mm-hmm. If you're vaccinated and you did a COVID test, then no need for quarantine. And there is certain regulation because we need the industries that were hit most badly were the entertainment industry, the food industry, and the tourism industry. And it's true, we have a very strong internal tourism industry, but that's not enough. So this is a major element now. We need to do it with precautious. We need to be careful, with all those variants. But it's starting, and it's very good news.
Yes, at least the vaccines are proven effective against some variants, though.
Yeah, they're very effective.
Especially Pfizer.
Pfizer, they are as far as I know, they are covering almost all the variants in certain degrees, and it's an amazing achievement for the science. If this discussion would take place a year ago, there was no vaccine, and now everybody are moving. Also here, I see more and more of my friends being vaccinated, and I think I tell them if there is a vaccine, just go for it.
How about work? Is it still mostly work from home?
No, they're over, finished. No, life is normal in Israel. School, that's it. That's it. It's over. There was the final. They had the end of the soccer league in Israel. The last game, 30,000 people at the field. No mask, nothing. That's it. Concerts are back. Life is normal. Movie theaters are going to be open now, or opened already actually. That's it. It's pretty normal. It's normal life.
It's good to go to Israel.
Well, ask the OFWs. They can tell you the 30,000. Life is that's it. We are back, and you will be back. country, but life will be back. I see more and more countries, slowly, because in the end, it's the vaccines and the willingness of the population to take the vaccine, and it will come.
Do you think how are Israeli and Philippine relations strengthened despite this pandemic?
Well, actually, during the pandemic, we're dealing mainly at the beginning when it started. We're dealing mainly with taking Israeli tourists that were stranded here to Israel, and we got so much assistance from the Filipino government and from the LGUs because they were not based in Manila. They were in the Israelis went to all the remote islands in the Philippines, so to bring them to Manila, and that was quite a challenging the first few months, and we get so much assistance from the Filipino government. Then we worked from the day one with the task force on sharing information about how Israel is dealing with the crisis, how do you deal with public safety, and then afterwards we submitted the assistance both to the Department of Education, which is distance learning material, which is a major issue, and then with the Department of Defense and the Philippine National Police with protective equipment and other equipment, and now we are bringing our top-level delegation in the next week exactly to share this experience, how we did all of this, and again, vaccinating the Filipinos in Israel. I am so proud of this from day one, and makes me proud. And the Philippines were very, very helpful to us. I can tell you, having the OFWs in Israel, so many OFWs returned to the Philippines, but having them in Israel, that was crucial because the most vulnerable population in Israel were the elderly. And in Israel, it's different from the Philippines. Either you go to an elderly home or you stay home with a Filipino. That's the term Filipino is a brand for good people and good service. And while we couldn't meet our parents and grandparents during the COVID, they not to, that there won't be, to keep them protected from the pandemic, the Filipinos were there for them, and they did an amazing way. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for what you did for us every day, all the years. But that was the moment that we needed it most. And now I see that the demand is growing because I see every day so many Filipinos coming to the embassy to do their paperwork to go to be as OFWs in Israel. So I'm very happy, very happy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Any last message for those watching you right now?
Well, I'm going to end very soon my term in the Philippines. And I love this country. I love the Filipino country. It was those last 3 years were very unique and special in our relations. I was a new ambassador 1 week in the Philippines when I was the official escort of your president, President Duterte, in his historic visit to Israel. And since then, our relations are booming. During pandemic, we opened here in Manila, while most embassies are sizing down, we opened for the first time our defense attaché office in the Philippines. Our commercial mission was open here in the Philippines. We inaugurated an honorary consulate in Davao, which is covering all of Mindanao. I'm living with a lot of satisfaction of our relations, a lot of love to the Filipino people, and I'm sure I will be back here as a tourist for sure. And I want to thank you, everyone. Maraming salamat for all of you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for taking care of our Filipinos there and for making them as part of your own. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. All the best. See you. Shalom. See you in Jerusalem.
Thank you, Alma and Ambassador Rafael Harpaz, for the update. Christelle and I will be back after a short break.